meet the reviewers. The first person would be Ubu Joseph. We call him Sep, Ubu Joseph Ebuka. Second will be Chime Chinonso, a very good friend and a classmate as well. And myself, Dubim Oji. Joseph is a finance and risk professional. So he started his time working in the stock exchange in Nigeria, eventually moved on to working abroad, and he founded a finance club called the S&P Finance Club, where they teach, it's like a non-profit initiative dedicated to improving financial literacy for young people mostly. And he holds a Master's of Science in Risk and Finance from University of Southampton. Chimenchin also is someone that, if you know him, he wears a lot of hats, but of recent he has narrowed it down to IT, and he's into digital solutions and health systems as well. So he's a seasoned IT professional, over 10 years of experience deploying digital solutions across large-scale projects, especially in the public health sector. He has a strong track record of leading multidisciplinary teams, building capacity and integrating AI technologies. He also is involved in data security and data security practices into mass campaigns. He holds an advanced degree in business administration and is currently pursuing a master's in information management. And lastly, myself, Dubem Oji. Uh, it can be interesting having to read your own resume, but I'll try. So I'm a marketing person. I'm a marketing manager and a brand strategist. I pride myself in building purpose-driven brands, brands that play meaningful roles in the community where they operate. So the brands that I manage, I try to make sure that these brands are not just there to profit, but to also become a member of the community or a society in a way that contributes to the development of the societies or the communities where they exist. That has been the bedrock of the work that I've been doing. I worked in Nigeria for a couple of years. I managed brands like Hero Lager, and currently I'm in Canada, and where I do shopper marketing for Molson and Miller High Life. Those are beer brands here. So it's time for the review. I would urge everyone to set aside any distractions and lean into the conversation. The things that will be shared today, they are not just for you to take in. We want you to process them. We want you to ask questions based on what you hear. We want you to be able to decide on whether they make sense or not. The floor is always open for you to challenge ideas. We want to have productive conversations. We want to have constructive criticisms. We want to see opinions, whether they diverge or converge. We want to know them. That is how we get better overall. Allow yourself to listen deeply, think freely, and engage openly. Then take what speaks to you and share that with others as well. Yeah, so we'll be moving over to the review of starting with Joseph, and he will be sharing the first 7 sections of the book. Yeah, Joseph, you can put up your screen now, and I enjoin you to be mindful of time and because managing time is super critical because everyone here has got other engagements that may be coming on after this one. So please stick to the 20 minutes allocated time so that we would have enough opportunity to ask questions at the end of the review. Your screen is coming up. Yeah, you can see now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Debem. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see it.
Trying to display it. Is it displaying now?
So I can see yeah, I think so. I think this works, but it looks like the presenter's view, not yeah, it's the presenter's view. Maybe you're
Oh,
using two
this,
screens. You need to
yeah,
switch.
I'm using
Yeah,
two
you need to
screens.
switch the screen that is.
Okay, let me take it off and see. Uh,
Oh, it
I'm sorry,
works.
I'm
Second.
still not so good with modern technologies. I'm so sorry, guys. Uh, what about now?
It's coming up. So I'm just. Oh yes,
Much
just as
better, right? Okay,
yes.
so I'll just have to turn this way because I was using my desktop to display the screen so I can see much clearer. Um, okay, good evening, everybody. If you can see my face as well, that's good. Unfortunately, I can't see everyone on the call. When I was reading this book and I was reflecting on what I would want to talk about, I just knew straight on that 10, 15, 20 minutes wouldn't do it for me. Because what Morgan Housel wrote in that book is something you can take months to teach, on or to reflect on or to internalize. But I mean, Cornell and DeBame has given very strict instructions that will stick to 15, 20 minutes. So I'll try and do justice to that. Um, so this is the book, but the BIM has spoken about almost everything that we need to know about introduced in the book. I'll be covering the intro section and the first seven chapters, right? And the way I would want to approach this book, that's not the way I had in mind to approach it, but to help us maximize time, I'll just talk about the introduction, then I'll talk about the salient points that I have reflected on, and I would want to invite you to make comments on before I hand over or when we get to the Q&A session. So the first part is why exactly do we think that spending money is more important than any other part of money exercise that you may want to engage in? Morgan Housel has written a book before about the psychology of money. There are many, many, many books out there about how to make money, how to manage money, how to multiply money. But I think it's the very first time that you'd see a book well written in this manner that talks about how to spend money as an art and not just as a science. And people may be asking why. And it's funny because spending money is even more important, makes much of a difference in everyone's life compared to making money or multiplying money because anybody can make money. I mean, you can win lotteries, you can get inheritance, right? And if you're fortunate enough to get education, get some sort of skills, you'll be able to make money through your career or through business. But spending money is way more complicated than that because it's driven by psychology, it's driven by your emotion, it's driven by impulses, it's driven by emotions, it's driven by things that you can't ordinarily control. They are not tangible. And the core idea of the book is how can you spend money in a way that would make your life much better and more meaningful? That's the core idea that I got from this book. And Morgan went ahead to talk about a lot of things in 21 chapters. And the first chapter, he was talking about the quest of a simple life. And what he was making, the point he was trying to make in that introduction is living a very, very simple life is one of the best ways or the better ways of spending your money, than living a complicated life. And that's just a very quick summary. And he spoke about a few other things, but I would just want to summarize them into two key sections. One is how not to spend money. In chapter 7 of that book, he told a story about the family of Vanderbilt. I'd read that story before, but it was like, oh, when I saw it in The Art of Spending Money, I'm like, I've read this story before, and now I see it in this book. It's a very interesting story, and it tells us most of the things you would need to know about the complications surrounding spending money and how not to spend money. Now, the family of the Vanderbilt in the 80s. Cornelius Vanderbilt, that's his name. He was a very rich guy. He came from almost nothing and built wealth, through railway, business, and steamship. And as at that time, what the money he had compared to today's currency was around 300 billion. Now, 300 billion in the 80s may seem like not a lot of money, But the money as at then contextually was way more what the US Treasury had. And the US Treasury is like the people that, keep the money for the government, the revenues that collect revenues for the government, collect taxes, and all the money that the government spend to better the lives of citizens. Currently, the US Treasury has over 1.2 trillion in the Treasury. So contextually, Vanderbilt had more than 1.2 trillion as of the 1980s, as of the 1880s rather. Now he built so much wealth and he was able to pass that down to his son, William Vanderbilt. And when he passed down that money to William, obviously that's so much money. William went ahead and he had a couple of children, and those children had a couple of children. And by the time they got to the fourth, fifth generation, the money had disappeared. They were busy building castles, spending on frivolity, spending on a lot of things that didn't make sense, you know. And the one of the sons in the fourth or fifth generation, which was Reginald, was a case study. And that's because he wasn't only spending money in a frivolous and reckless manner, he was spending money in a very harmful manner. And that's one of the ways not to spend money that I captured from that book. And do not spend money to harm yourself. Do not spend money to buy things that will kill you. Do not spend money to lead you to a life of retrogression, a life of regret. Reginald was spending money on, womanizing, on alcohol, on drugs, on gambling. At the end of the day, he died at the age of 45, by complications from health problems. Now, this is one of the things I would want us to reflect on and reflect about. Money can serve different purposes, right? And it's one of the things spoken in the introduction. It can serve as a tool that you'd use to make things for yourself, and it can serve as you being the tool that money would use to advance its cause. So it's a servant. He's a dual master as well. It can be a master and it can be a servant. That's what I mean by that. So if you're using money not as a tool to make meaningful decisions about your life, to make better decisions that will enrich your life, enrich your community, rather you're spending money. If you're a guy, you're spending money on gambling, you're spending on women, you're spending on drinks, alcohol, on drugs, then that's one of the ways not to spend money, right? The second way is do not spend money signaling status. Do not spend money buying riches, buying material stuff that have little or no value to your life. Now, one of the arguments that Morgan Housel put forward in that book, he was talking about how to spend money how spending money can indirectly make you happy, a happy person, right? And how spending money in the way we think brings us happiness doesn't necessarily bring us happiness. If you're buying expensive wristwatch because you think, oh, I have the money and I can buy this thing because I think I can afford it and it's going to bring me happiness, Morgan is telling us it wouldn't. And from my life experiences as well, I've learned a few things that I had bought because I think I have the money to buy them. After a couple of days, the excitement wanes. You don't have any excitement anymore. If you think you have maybe $20,000 now, 20,000 pounds if you're in the UK to buy a car. You get that car and you're fortunate to make another 50,000 pounds. You think you can spend or splurge that amount of money on another car. The 20,000 car would mean nothing to you when you go ahead and you see, oh, I can see this other big guy driving a car of 50,000. Why am I driving the one for 20,000 pounds? And you go ahead and spend your money on that as well. So that's not a good way to spend your money. And that's one of the things Morgan is trying to tell us. And if you look in your life and you look around you, what are some of those things you've spent your money on that you're spending because you want to show that you've arrived when you've actually not arrived? The third one is do not spend money to impress or oppress anyone. Morgan says that's one of the biggest financial assets you can have, and that is not having the need to impress anybody. And if your primary aim of always buying things or going somewhere or going on a trip, going on vacation is I'm already thinking I'm gonna go to Spain and I'm looking forward to taking beautiful pictures. I'll post on social media so people can know I'm living a happy life or I'm leading a happy life. That is not a good way to spend your money. And the question you should always ask yourself, if I'm buying this thing, or I'm going this place, or I'm making this investment, and nobody would ever get to know about it, would I go ahead to do it? If you can ask yourself that question, then I think that's a good metric to know if that's something you need to spend your money on. So do not spend to impress anybody because generally speaking, many people do not care. I mean, we have a lot of problems to worry about. I have a lot of problems. If Cornell or Dubim now spends 50,000 buying an expensive wristwatch, obviously I would just say, Cornell, you're a big guy. Dubim, you're rich, and that's it. I would care less about what they do with that wristwatch in a couple of weeks to come, right? And if you're spending money because you want to oppress a group of people, or maybe you're the kind of rich people we have that they spend money so they can segregate or intimidate or suppress other people. Morgan is saying that is not a good way to spend your money because it doesn't advance any good cause, right? Because of time, like I said, I'm rushing these things. The fourth one that I picked from the book is do not spend money on someone else's money experience. In the second chapter, Morgan is saying that all behavior makes sense when you have more information. And the idea is based on my life experiences, I may be spending money in a certain kind of way that may not make sense to the other person. I may be spending money that may not make sense to Debate or to Cornell. And that's because of how I was raised. That's because of the experiences I've had when I was growing up. That's because of the unique challenges I've had in the past, right? And that's because of my emotional and psychological makeup. It could be because of my exposure. To give you an example, I went to a pub that was yeah, a week today when EPL, the last game in the Premier League, and I just felt it was good to be around people. And a group of people, ladies, came and they bought me they asked me if I want to take some drinks, and I said no, I'm not interested because I was going to the gym that day. I don't want to take any alcohol. And they insisted and they bought me the first bottle and I had the second one and the third one. So I don't know if they had any interest of buying me that many drinks, but I was thinking in my mind, why are you spending this kind of money on a stranger? Are you that happy? I had to ask them if they were supporters of Manchester United because we won 3-0, 3-0 that day. You know, I had started engaging them in a conversation and they said no. And they started telling me a few things based on their life experiences, how they've had some awful experiences in the past. The other one said how her mom had cancer and survived, how she had accidents and survived, how she lost a job and finally so they felt like the best way to express and to live life to the fullest is to go to pubs and have fun. And if they see people they like, they create friendships and, spend on people they like. So for me, it didn't make sense because I didn't grow up that way. That's not one of my money psychology. I don't just spend money because I think, again, that's what Morgan is trying to tell us. My experience growing up and the way I spend money is completely different from theirs. I can't spend money because I'm thinking I may die tomorrow so I can have all the fun I can have now. The reverse is the case. I always think that I'm going to lead and live a very long life. So I don't spend all the money today so I can consume and have all the happiness in the world I can have today. So the idea is do not spend money because you're basing how Seb spends his own money. You've seen me buy certain things and you feel like that's the framework. That's how you spend your money. So do not do that. That's not a good way to spend money. You spend money by doing some introspection in your life. Why are you doing this? Why are you spending this money? What value is it bringing to you? What childhood experience is it trying to cure? Right? What need is it trying to provide? So if you have to do that analysis for yourself, by yourself, before you can spend money and not basing your expenditure or the kind of things you buy on what other people buy. And just I've spoken how not to spend money. I don't know how much time I have. Okay, I have very few minutes. So this is exactly how to spend money. In in the book as well, when Morgan was done talking about the Vanderbilt family that had so much money, about over 1 trillion, I would say now, 300 billion in the 80s is more than 1 trillion now, richer than Elon Musk. And by the time they got to the sixth generation, the money had disappeared completely. He also gave an example of a way to spend money to build wealth or to have wealth. And the guy is Chick Finney. And this guy had about 8 billion naira, sorry, $8 billion. And his orientation about life or how to go with wealth is money is very fleeting. We use it to solve problems. We use it to improve people's lives. We don't just have money because we want to accumulate, want to buy expensive things, want to expand our status in the society. He didn't have that belief. So his belief is we use money to solve problems, right? And he had to give 99.9% of his wealth to charity. And by the time he was dead, by the time he died, he had just $2 million, as his net worth, which of course his kids had to inherit. But he gave almost everything away. And in that book as well, he was talking about some of the meaning behind spending your money by advancing the good cause in the society, by helping the poor, by building skills, by giving back to the community, by doing things in that manner. So that's exactly the Miro example of the Vanderbilt society family. So the first one I would say is you would use money to buy freedom and control over your time. I usually ask people one of my sessions that I had in the S&P Finance Club when I was teaching about investment, I asked them, in your money journey, always ask yourself, why do I want to invest? Why do I want to earn money? Why do I want to spend this money? Why am I making money? I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer. It looks simple, it sounds simple, but it's a very difficult question. And one of the things I would want to tell you is Morgan says we shouldn't tell people how to spend money because people's experiences are different and people have unique experiences and those experiences drive them to spend money in certain kind of ways. But I'm saying that there's a framework that you can use as a guide on how to spend your money. And one of the pieces of advice I would give anyone is regardless of how much money you have, especially if you have enough of it, ensure you're using your money to buy as much freedom and control over your time as possible. Because time is the most expensive currency that you can never get back. Freedom is something that you can never get back. As a matter of fact, many of the rich people we know are not even free. He also gave an example about how top 10, the 10 richest people in the world have had about 13 divorces, right? And seven out of those 10 people have divorced at least once. So he goes ahead to tell you that there's things that money cannot just buy, you know. So that's one of the things I'm suggesting, and I'm telling you how to spend your own money. Consider ensuring that you use your money to buy enough time. Do not go to work and you're overworking yourself. You're working 80 hours a week, 70 hours a week. You don't have time for family. You don't have time for yourself. Maybe you're one of the members of the Game Changers reading club and you're asked to read a couple of books in this particular book, a couple of chapters, and you say, I don't have that time. I mean, reading is one of the ways to enrich your life, to add meaning to your life, but because you're busy chasing money, that you end up not having the time to spend, you can see you're allowing money to have full control over your life. The second one, oh, no, I think, okay. Yeah. So the second one I'm suggesting is use money to solve your money problems. Now, one of the obvious things you use money to do is to solve problems. If you have family problems, if you're African, which I believe that's almost everybody here, and you're from Nigeria as well, the black tax is there. And is a controversial topic whether you should spend so much on black tax or not. But my ideology is if you have problems around you in the community, in your family, and you have the means, use the money to solve those problems. That's one of the reasons why you have money. If you're on feeling well, and you think you have a couple of thousands in your bank account and you don't want to spend that money to solve your health problems because you're reserving that money for vacation, then that's not a way to spend money. The better way to spend money is if you have a problem that money can solve, then use it to solve that problem. To put this into context, if you're working, if your office is a couple of minutes away from your house, walking distance away from your house, and the only place you go is work and maybe church, and almost everywhere you go on a regular day-to-day basis is closer to your house. You don't have a need to spend money on buying cars, my perspective. So that's not a money problem, right? So you spend that on maybe buying better shoes. You can spend that on buying sports gears that you used to run to stay fit. You can spend that on your community if you have any around you. You can spend that to advance any good cause you're passionate about. That's exactly one of the ways to spend money, right? Um, the third one is spending money on building wealth and future options. It's just about talking the way I know at time. Sorry. Just give me 1 minute. I'm sorry. So spending money on building wealth. I'm just talking about investment in this third one. Then the last one is spend money to buy things that money cannot buy. So this is my favorite one. And I've spoken about health. That's one of the things that money cannot buy. Instead of buying a mattress that you know you can change next year, and by the time you change that mattress, you must have had a couple of neck pains or back pains that would make you to go to the hospital and buy more medicines. And, that's not a good way to spend money. So buy quality things where you can sleep and have a good night rest. Spend money on your relationships. You can't buy quality friendships, but you can use money to sustain or enrich the relationships you have. Spend money on your family, spend money on your wife, on your husband, on your kids. That's one of the ways to spend money. Spend money on creating and building lasting memories that you can always look back at or look back on. Spend money on rich experiences. If you have a purpose, like for example, the game changes. You can if you had joined earlier on, they talked about the vision and the mission. If I had £1 billion, I know what to do. I'll just give it to Cornell and Dubem, how we can advance what the game changes readership club they do. So if you have a purpose or a passion like that, that's also one of the ways to spend your money. So I'm very sorry for taking so much time. I will hand over now to Chimex to take over from chapter 8 of the book. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph. You've done a brilliant job sharing what you've learned and what you've experienced from reading the first 7 chapters of this book. And I like how you were able to relate them to personal life. The illustrations were down to earth and very relatable. So thank you so much for an awesome job. And Chimax is ready. I can see you already sharing your screen. And please take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Dubin. Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see
All,
your screen.
all right. Thank you very much. I want to first of all thank the game changers for the opportunity given to me to do this review. I'll try to stick to the 15 minutes. I also want to thank everyone that joined through my invite, and also especially thank the person that Sam the Octopus invited to join. Thank you very much. I don't know you, but thank you very much for joining. So I'll be talking on chapter 8 to 14. And this book, if I should sound spiritual, this book ministered to me in a different way. If I should sound spiritual, and I'm going to be sharing together with some examples because I know many of us here are Black people, and many of us are also majorly Nigerians. How we allow those things to affect our daily life. I'm going to talk on that. I'm going to talk on that as well. So let's go. This is my core idea of the book. I know it look like plenty text, right? But I'll stick to the time. I'll stick to the time. So for chapters 8 to 14, Morgan developed the central idea that money can be used to just improve one's life rather than just social status. And in the chapters, he talked about utility versus status, comparison, social expectations, and personal identity. And people spend money for reasons that do not genuinely increase their happiness. Instead, they often pursue social status, recognition. And in a country like Nigeria, where if you don't call people by their title and all that, it can be a problem. And this can lead to dissatisfactions and poor financial decisions. And the author also encourage readers to focus on spending that provide real personal value that will lead to long-term well-being. And also, um, in chapters 9 to 13, he made importance of making decisions that will minimize future regrets. We need to take decisions that we are not going to regret in future. Building wealth through consistent habit, understanding the power of compounding. The power of compounding, we talk about compounding a lot when we talk about money, but it affects every other aspect of our life beyond money, both skills and everything. And according to the author, financial success is not measured by what you have physically, but the ability to live to your value without being constrained by social pressure and the rest. So now I'm going to be talking about the chapters one after the other. I don't have time. So I'll start from chapter 8. In chapter 8, uh, is about utility versus status. So the author challenged readers to consider whether whatever they are buying improves their lives or they are just buying it to just show pressure or to based on societal pressure or just to for social status. And we know we are in Nigeria where you see celebrities, we hear that a celebrity bought a car 50 million and it goes around social media and try to make noise, and it makes some people even wonder if their life is real or if they are making it or not. And some examples I want to cite here is, for example, a young graduate earning 150,000 monthly, he buys the latest iPhone mainly to appear successful on social media when there are lesser phones they can buy and and still be able to have more money to invest, and they just buy those phones just to impress people. And you see people buying cars of 50 million naira when they don't have a house they can live in, and when that 50 million naira they're using to buy a car can actually buy them house and still buy them car. I've seen a situation where someone have bought phone and don't have money to buy data for the phone, and the person bought an iPhone, and it's one of the most stupid decisions I've ever seen in my life, where someone wants to just prove status without checking what if they really need that particular thing they want to buy. Then this is worth discussing because many spending decisions are influenced by social pressure rather than personal benefit. Even the author shared a story about a particular guy, I've forgotten the name, who loves buying wines and ended up buying a lot of fake wines because some people who want to buy these things out of social pressure end up buying fake things. And because there's a thin line between there's a thin line between the thin line between most of the original and fakes. So the author also shares story of somebody who made money by exchanging fake stuff with original stuff in a store just because there's no much difference between them. So the difference between utility and status spending, we need to spend based on what we really want, what will benefit our life, and not because of what we want the society to see. Then chapter 9 talked more on the best financial decision is often to minimize future regret. So rather than seeking perfect outcomes, the author encourages us to make choices that are sustainable and less likely to cause long-term effects. So chapter 9 is about risk and regret. So make decisions that reduce future regrets rather than chasing perfect outcomes. For example, imagine someone using all their life investments to invest in Ponzi schemes. I'll use MMM as an example. In 2016, some people used all their pension money, sold lands just to do MMM, and at the end, they lost everything, and they are still regretting it till now. And despite that particular situation, a lot of Ponzi schemes have come up in Nigeria over and over again, even till now. People are still duped, and there's a rumor that MMM is even back to Nigeria. I don't even care to know, but for you to see that these are decisions that many people will regret later in life. And um, an employee who consistently save part of their salary in a diversified investment rather than risking everything in speculative venture like Ponzi scheme is likely not to regret their future. Then in chapter 10, the author argues that comparison creates an endless cycle of dissatisfaction because there'll always be someone that is wealthier or successful. There, the author even mentions something about jealousy that I want to read out. The author said, and I quote, the author said, telling someone they are jealous is always an extreme insult because no one wants to admit they are chasing what others have. So the author is trying to say here that a lot of people actually use others to compare their life. They always look at what others have achieved and want to use it to know how they are going to live their life without looking at what they really want for themselves. And it happens in places where you see that your neighbor's children are going to a particular school. You want your own children to go to that school without checking if you have the financial capacity to actually take your children to that particular school that you see your neighbors taking their children to. So this is something you need to look into. Stop comparing yourself with anybody. Then I want to cite some few examples there. For example, you see your friends posting vacations in Dubai, London. Not that to go vacation is not bad, and you begin to feel unsuccessful despite having a stable income. The author said that we need to define happiness in our own way. My definition of happiness and your definition of happiness will not be the same thing. And imagine family taking loan to organize extravagant weddings because another family in the community did something that was lavish. That is very, very wrong. And someone trying to upgrade their car slowly just because their colleagues have newer model of cars. This is also a bad way to compare. So the author put it at look at them. You are just looking at somebody's life and trying to use it to compare how your own life will be, which doesn't make sense at all. So let me go further to my other slides. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 says that wealth without independence is a unique form of poverty. Seb said something about that too. So this chapter raises an important question. Is financial success measured by what we own or by the freedom we have to make choices about our lives? So what this chapter is talking about is if we are creating wealth, the greatest value of money is freedom. Freedom for you to have time to be able to enjoy what you have, to have freedom. You can be rich and you don't have freedom. The author also differentiated rich and wealth too. Being wealthy is to reach a point where your money can buy your time. With money, you can decide what you want to do, at what time, and when. So we should work in a way to have freedom. For example, a civil servant earning moderate salary with savings and investment can be more financially secure than someone who lives on multiple loans. And a person with 6 months of living expenses have saved more freedom during job loss than someone who spend everything they earn. That means that there is need for us to save at least 6 times our monthly income for emergency situations. Then chapter 12 rather, also talks on social debt, taking loans to finance elaborate wedding. I've talked about that. Then chapter 13 is quiet compounding. The chapter highlights how consistent habits can help us to compound wealth. And those skills you are learning, not just money, learning skills gradually compounds into lots of experiences in future. Then when it comes to money, saving 10,000 naira, 20,000 naira, $10 every month, any amount you can save gradually every month over the years can compound over time. Then chapter 14, the relationship between money and personal identity. So here, the author explores how people use money to express who they are, raising questions about whether our possessions truly define us. Whether our possessions. So people always use money to express who they think they are, but money cannot define who you are as a person. Rather, you are the one that will define your happiness. The author here shared a story of how a wealthy set of people went to vacations in different places in Africa, when they stayed in an expensive hotel, and when they stayed in camp without electricity. And the children tend to even enjoy when they stayed in a camp without electricity more than when they were in a hotel, because when they were in a place without electricity, they were able to interact more with the locals than when they were in a hotel where they were just secluded because they are wealthy. So people often use money to express who they think they are. For example, a young banker can feel compelled to wear designer clothes and drive a luxurious vehicle because that image is associated with success, in quotes. Some entrepreneurs spend heavily on outward appearances just to fit in into the idea of being a big businessman. And this does not really show who they truly are. And a professional may also feel pressure to live in a particular neighborhood. Like if you're in Abuja, living in Asokoro, or in Lagos, living in Lekki, Banana Island, helps you to identify to a particular set of people in the society. But people can actually live there, but are actually poor and are not happy. Then chapter 8 to the hidden cost of seeking approval from others. So several chapters emphasizes that trying to get admiration through spending can be financially expensive and emotionally exhausting. For example, people trying to one using example is it relates with our everyday life. For example, trying to spend heavily on a shebi when you know you can't afford it. It doesn't make sense at all. Then we need to align our spending with our personal values. We should have our personal values, and our personal values should not be defined with what the society wants, but what we really want ourselves. A recurring argument is that money should be used in ways that reflect individual priorities rather than society's expectation. Let me use myself as an example here. The last car I drove it for many years, and I had a particular friend always yabbing me on that car. He'd be like, Chimes, this car have taken you to Togo. This car, if this car can go to Cotonou and back and all that. And I was just laughing the person because that doesn't define me in any way. As far as that car was moving, taking me to where I was going, I was very, very okay with that. And I didn't allow that pressure to push me to change car. So I only change car when I know it has reached to be changed and it aligns with my personal value. So what I'm trying to say is what this book is saying in chapter 8 to 14, that we should align spending with our personal value. So the idea that financial success is more psychological than mathematical. So here, from chapter 8, throughout these chapters, the author talked about emotion. People spend because of emotions, habits, identity, and social influence. I'm rounding up. Wow. So in rounding up, The Art of Spending by Morgan Housel teaches that the true purpose of money is not to display wealth or gain social status, but to create freedom, independence, and a meaningful life. And the author discusses important ideas like difference between utility and status spending, the dangers of comparison, the value of minimizing future regret, the burden of social expectations, the power of compounding, and connection between money and personal identity. And this chapter emphasizes that financial decisions are largely influenced by psychology and personal values rather than numbers alone. So the main takeaway is that we should spend money intentionally on things that genuinely improve our life, avoid unnecessary pressure to impress others, and use our financial resources to support long-term happiness, personal growth, and charity in the society. So I have three major takeaways. And this is just the three major things I learned from this chapter 8 to 14. Number one, money should be spent to improve personal well-being rather than to gain social approval. And Husserl teaches that spending decisions should be guided by utility, values, and genuine happiness, not by the desire to impress others or keep up with societal expectations. And true wealth is the freedom and independence that money can provide. The book encourages readers to focus on building financial security and making decisions that reduce future regrets. And financial success is heavily influenced by mindset, habits, and self-awareness. So, in conclusion, I want to say that when we see people spend money or behave the way they behave towards money, we should not allow that to put pressure on us. Some people put pressure on themselves, not because nobody is pressuring them, just because of what they see out there, especially in this era of social media where there's a lot of pressures out there. You want to live big, you want to have influential wedding, want to have big wedding. But some of these things that people are using to put pressure on you socially, if you look at it very well, many of them don't last. And there is no height, there is no apex to social status. It keeps changing every day. What is invoked today will not be invoked tomorrow, will not be invoked next tomorrow. So if you're living your life to meet up with what is in the society, you will never meet up. You will never meet up because there is no apex to it. It doesn't have end. And that's why we should focus more on our personal happiness more than what people think. We should focus more on what will add value to our personal lives more than what anybody will expect. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and bye.
Thank you so much, Chimex. Uh, you really hit the nail on the head there. And thank you for ministering to us as well. I mean, you've also, in a way, given me courage to say some of the things that I had in mind to share, but wasn't sure if the forum was right. But thank you for being so courageous, I must say. Yeah, so I will be the last presenter, or I'll be the last reviewer, as the case may be, after which we open up for questions. The two speakers before me have spoken very well, and I must say they've actually summarized the whole point of the book. But because I've been asked to speak, right, I'll just say one or two. Now, on the cover page of the book we just read, a subheading reads, Simple Choices for a Richer Life. Many of us have not thought about whether we want to be rich or to have a rich life. Those two things are different things, right? And if I'm to recommend, go for a richer life. Go for a richer life versus going for being just rich. And the two authors that spoke earlier spoke about the pitfall of letting money identify you. You know that you probably have heard about that uncle. They say, oh, that uncle is a rich man. We have a rich uncle. We have a rich brother. We have a rich sister. When people define you by the money you own, what happens is that when you lose that money, you become a nobody because the identity is gone. It's simple as that. But when you have a rich life, it means that you are living a life according to your own terms, according to your own rules. You don't answer to anybody. You don't have to explain yourself. Of course, you have to be honest with yourself. That is what a rich life is. So if you are to be defined and identified by anything, be identified as a reliable friend, a responsible father, a loving husband, a true believer. These are things that would make your life rich because these are identities that once built cannot be taken from you. So I will dive into chapter 15 of the book. Now, the chapter says, try something new. The whole point of this chapter is that many of us don't even know why we want money. Some of us are chasing money because we grew up in a society without much of it. So if you come from a background where there is not a lot of resources, like people who grew up during the economic depression that happened post-World War, there was so much depression and they lacked a lot that the moment the economy started improving, there was this extravagant lifestyle that followed. And that was because these people are coming from a background where they almost had nothing. They didn't even imagine that they would come into a world where they could afford the basic things of life. And that context influenced their actions. Now, the book is telling you that you can, yes, everything that you do, there's a reason behind it. If you know, that's why someone earlier pointed out that with more information, everything makes sense. If you see somebody acting in a particular way, you don't just judge them immediately. Try to learn more. So let people's actions breed curiosity in you to want to know more. Why is this person behaving this way? Because when you understand where they are coming from, what they have been, what they have experienced, you realize that, yeah, these people are not looking like what they are going through. So every situation makes sense until with more information. But now, are you going to let that situation, that background? I used to tell my friends, don't let your background put your back on the ground. Are you going to let the fact that you grew up in poverty make you live your life chasing money every single day? I mean, and it's a fact that people from poor backgrounds often become so ambitious that they gain a lot of wealth. They build a lot of wealth. And then what you see happen next is that their children are no longer as ambitious as they are because their children don't need to be because their father has already made a lot of money. And then you see that their children become disabled mentally and ambition wise. So, but that is why it's also important to read books. Now, when you have this insight that I'm behaving this way because of where I come from, what I've been told, the orientations that I've had, the paradigms or whatever system of life that I'm coming from. That is what is influencing what my way of life and action. Then once you realize this, the next thing is to check, is it actually paying me? Does it make sense for me? Is this how I want to live? Once you've made this and reflections or self-check, you then decide on, okay, it's time to stop my past from determining my present. I want my present actions to reflect the future that I want to live in. That is when you then transcend beyond just letting your story, your past determine your present, and then living that intentional life. So when it comes to trying something new, many people don't know what actually makes them happy. And the author invites us to experiment. Don't indulge in smoking or drinking or womanizing because people have fantasized and made this thing sound cool. It may not be cool for you. You may not find it cool. Same way, like for those of us that like watching soccer, we watch a lot of football. It doesn't mean that it is the best way for you to pass time. Find yourself. So, and how do you find yourself? Try a couple of things, all right? You know, by trying them, you realize whether this works for you or not. Be the one in control, be the one making the decision, not the crowd or your background or where you're coming from. And by repeated experimentation, you will find out what you love. And by spending money on what you love, you get fulfillment. You get that thing money cannot buy. You can only get it by spending on what you love. If you spend on other things that people are chasing or you spend to impress, you only get emptiness. So find out what makes you happy and try it. And I want to leave this chapter with a quote that really resonated with me. It said, personal finance. We've all heard about personal finance. Personal finance is more personal than financial. So think about it. Personal finance is more personal than financial. Now, let's move on to chapter 16, your money and your kids. This one is something that most of us can relate, and it's a situation that we've all heard of happen all the time. That most of the times wealth built generations before do not live beyond a certain number of generations in the same family. So some family wealth vanishes in like the second or third generation. Why does this keep happening? It's all boils down to the money habits, the arts, of spending in the family. Now, so money can open doors for your children, but it can also cripple them. It can paralyze them. There is, now that I live in Canada, and one thing that is popular here is buying life insurance, such that when any member of your family who is insured passes away. So, for instance, I have life insurance on myself. If for any reason I'm no longer here, my family would get what they call a death benefit. And that money can be very huge because for the life insurance, you keep paying for it monthly for a certain period of time, which can run to 10, 15, 20 years, depending on what your contract says, right? It's a small amount of money like insurance, but the payback can be huge. So we have this thing they call trust fund babies, or and they're referring to people who suddenly came across huge amount of money in millions, unexpected amounts of money, and they never prepared for it. This money paralyzes them. They become like that butterfly whose development or metamorphosis was sort of accelerated, thinking that it was going to be for their own help, but eventually they ended up not being able to fly. So, but like I said, this is a concept many of us know already. So the point is, so what? Now that we know it, what is going to happen? The author shares some insights. I want to pick on one of them: gift with strings. We often fancy the idea of, I don't want any gift with strings attached. When it comes to raising your children, every gift should come with a string attached. That way, they don't become entitled. That way, they learn the value of being responsible, earning your seat at the table. So, of course, I'm not going to ask my 2-year-old daughter or my 5-year-old child to go and do something a 5-year-old would not do, but involve them in things that they can do and reward them. So the gifts you give them come in form of a reward for the work that they are doing. That way, they build a healthy relationship between income and work. And more importantly, they need to know that money does not make them better than others. Money is only a way to express your values and personalities. Money should not determine what should be your value and personality. So if they understand these things, of which the best way to do these things is to model it. If you are the rich person and all you do is talk about how you have this and don't have that, like one very wealthy guy in Nigeria was saying that he doesn't listen to people that doesn't have G-Wagon. What do you think the children would think of people that don't have G-Wagon? It means if you don't have a G-Wagon, you don't have a voice in the world those children are going to grow up in, right? So the ideal thing is to build great values and model it. Then let your children mirror it. They will learn from you and live that way. So moving on, spreadsheets don't care about your feelings. This is chapter 17. I have a very interesting thing to say here. There was this joke I read online one day. Somebody said that uh, they advised me to spend my money that life is short, to enjoy my money that life is short. Now I've enjoyed all my money and I'm still alive. So the person has exhausted all the money they have, but they are still alive. So what will then happen? And then there is the person who, on the other hand, did not spend their money, saved every tiny bit of it. And at the end of the day, they died. Next of kin just hammered like that. Then there is also another person who saved everything, right? But in the process of saving, they became savers and they didn't know how to do anything else other than save. So the author was talking about a pandemic that financial advisors are experiencing, whereby you see people at retirement, they have saved all their life. They saved up until retirement, and you are now begging them to spend the money, to enjoy the money. They don't know how to spend it or enjoy it because they have allowed saving become their identity, and that is all they know how to do. It's almost bad, like that even in retirement, they are still saving. I mean, what? that would be a big cost, right? So spreadsheets don't care about your feelings, but emotions are important in finance. Like I told you, finance, personal finance is more personal than financial. So the best outcomes live at the intersection of your head and your heart. So while you are building for tomorrow, you have to live for today. And you don't let what you are building become your definition or the sole purpose of your life. You don't let because you want to save money make you put your health in danger. You don't want because you want to make more money, you put your life in danger as a result, or you sacrifice what money cannot buy to get money. The point here is that, there was a book we read earlier in the year, which was The Five Types of Wealth. And I picked one thing from the book, which I know I would live with. The book said that money is important. Yes, money is important. But at some point in life, more money does not really make any much difference in your life. Every one of us needs to determine and decide and be aware of that point in our life when more money would not make much difference anymore in our lives. And finally, for this chapter, I want us to understand the concept of affordability. When somebody says, I can afford something, what is that person saying? And when someone says, I cannot afford something, what is that person saying? And when someone says, why is that person spending this much, wasting money? Do they really understand what they mean by why is that person wasting money? Take, for instance, if a billionaire buys a private jet, somebody who has at least a billion and more buys a private jet. The most expensive ones I hear of now could cost about $75 million. But you're a billionaire in dollars and you buy that. $75 million is somewhat less than 1% of their wealth. So a billionaire spends 1% of their wealth. A student who is worth maybe about 100K, because you are worth your school fees plus your pocket money plus anything other thing you can do as your side hustle. Let's say the student is worth 500,000. If the student buys an iPhone, an iPhone that costs $1 million, the student is spending their net worth times 2 to buy it. Now, if you're looking at it, you say, oh, the guy who bought a private jet is being extravagant, wasting money, and the guy who bought an iPhone is not. But in actual sense, the guy who bought an iPhone and is worth 500K or 500K is the one who is actually wasting money. They don't know what they afford, what is affordable for them. So you need to know what is affordable for you and look at it from the point of view of percentages. You need to know how much you are worth. Do that work of figuring out what is your worth in terms of the difference between your liabilities and your assets. And anytime you want to spend money, especially when it's significant, check what percentage of my worth am I giving away? How soon can I replenish it? That will help you understand, put affordability in context, and you would know if you can really afford what you're spending on. So don't measure affordability in relation to what other people are spending. So I take for instance, you are in a clique of friends and they're all buying iPhones. It may be affordable for them. It may not be for you. So the key here is minimize future regrets. You are going to regret a couple of things financially. It is definitely going to happen, but minimize them as much as possible. Be in control. Be in control. All right. So know what is affordable for you and know what is not. And this simple formula that I just shared, starting from knowing what's your net worth, calculate your assets and your liabilities, and every time you want to make a significant spend, divide that spend by your net worth. You would arrive at a decimal value, which if you multiply by 100, it will give you a percent. So that percentage will then determine what percentage of your net worth you are investing in that thing. Now, to the finer things, that is chapter 18. So the so what of this chapter is that wealth is measured in experiences and satisfactions, not possessions. The richest man would live the poorest life if they don't have gratitude. And gratitude starts with whatever you have. Do you value it? Are you grateful for it? Do you appreciate it? Do you even enjoy it? Or are you in that cycle of always acquiring and never for once standing to appreciate what you have? Now, we talked about at the beginning of my review, I called out a subheading on the title of the page, which was Simple Ways to a Richer Life. The whole point of a richer life is living life on your own terms, spending money on things that you love, and making decisions that minimize regrets on your part. Also ensuring that you own money. Money doesn't own you. So if money owns you, you do things because you have money or you want the money. But if you own the money, you make the money do the things that you love to do. You make the money live, express the things that you want to express or the life that you want to enjoy. So wealth is measured in experiences and satisfaction, not actually possession. Now, this one is important. I actually love this chapter, the life cycle of greed and fear. Have you ever wondered, or you would have seen people like in the society, right, saying things like, these rich people are very greedy. I'm sure you can relate. Or you're asking people, why are you greedy? What we don't know is that greed and fear are actually the same thing. They are not opposites. You see, when you have so much money and you identify yourself by the money you have, the fear of losing that money will make you want more money. At that point where you want more money just for the fear of losing money, it's the point where you become greedy. So you see how fear and greed are operating in a cycle. You have so much money, you don't want to lose it. Because if you lose it, you become nothing. You're identified as a rich person. So if you lose it, you become nothing. Because of that fear of losing that money, you go into an overdrive, an overambition to make more money by all means. And that is the definition of greed here. Another fear that I want to address, which affects mostly people who allow money control them or allow other people's life determine theirs, without people who are not in control or living life on their own terms, is this FOMO, fear of missing out. Because you want to be part of what is happening, because you want to be part of the big people, the trending guys, because the society have defined you as a celebrity, as a happening person, and you want to live up to it. That fear of missing out would be driving your financial life. So you are not spending on your own terms. You are not spending the way you want. You are not living the way you would love to. But everything is determined by this fear of missing out. And like I said earlier, money is important, but we all get to that point in life where more money doesn't really make us more happier. So there is not a direct equation between money and happiness. So if you don't take anything out of this, maybe just at least stop that rationale or that thinking that if I get more money, I will be happier. But decide on doing what will make you happy with the much you have now. Live the life that you want to live on your own terms. Then, moving on to chapter 20, how to be miserable spending your money. You've seen people that, despite the fact that they have money, they don't have peace. The money is making them try to belong where they don't really care. You're joining clubs that you don't care about. And while you are there in that club, you are missing your friends that you really have good time with. Or you make yourself unavailable to the people who actually add meaning to your life. The wealth that you get takes away things that you had when you were not wealthy, things that you didn't need to pay money to have. It comes with not understanding that money is a tool. And when you don't have this understanding, you make money everything. So the bottom line here is money doesn't solve everything, but also money solves things. So don't think money doesn't solve anything. It's important. Just know what it is there for. And again, you may not know what will make you happy, and that is fine. But you would know what wouldn't make you happy. So start by eliminating all those things that wouldn't make you happy when you have money. So if you have the money and you know that joining these people or buying this thing wouldn't necessarily make you happy, start by avoiding those. The more you clear space in your life, in your mind, the more you have room for the things that you actually love. And those are the things you would do. Take, for instance, one of the richest guys in Nigeria, he's a billionaire, this Cosmas Maduka. He so much loves street level evangelism. So much so that even now that he's a billionaire, he still carries his mic to go on the streets every time to preach. He wants to be defined as somebody who shares the gospel and transforms people's mind through renewal of their mind. He doesn't want to be referred to as a billionaire. And he's deliberate about living the life he wants. So don't make money make you miserable. Don't make money make your life empty. So much so that you are now under a lot of pressure to fill it up with things that would even bring you closer to your grave. Lastly, the last chapter, the luckier you are, the nicer you should be. I mean, the author explained a lot of things here which did resonate well. But in line with, what Chimex has inspired me to do, I would love to reflect on what Jesus told the rich young ruler that came to visit him. The rich young ruler in the Bible came and told him that, what must I do to inherit the kingdom? What must I do to have eternal life? And he was told to have treasures in heaven. Have treasures in heaven. It is not much different from what the author is saying in this chapter. That the fact that you are financially well-to-do, yes, you worked hard for it, but there is a huge part of what happened to you that is luck, things that are not under your control. So don't let the money that you have make you a worse human being. Let it make you a quality human being. A quality human being that is grateful and kind. He sums it up in this line: when life is good, give back. When life is good, give back. Giving back is the same thing as building treasures in heaven. Because look at what one argument the author made here. Kindness is both moral and strategic. You cannot predict who you will one day rely on. So, and isn't that the same thing as when Christ said, build your treasures in heaven where thieves, moths cannot take it? Because when you have given back, the good that you have put in the world, nothing can take it from you. And it will always come back to you, one way or the other. In summary, money is a tool, not an identity, and the art lies in making it serve you, not the other way around. So, thank you very much for participating and listening. That is the end of my own review. And at this point, we would love to interact. Let's just spend 10 minutes interacting and sharing whatever we've learned or whatever points that, made sense to us in any way. So if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, if there's something you want to share, please unmute and have a go at it. You can also type in the comment section if you prefer that.
Hi, Dubem. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Izu.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I'm wearing Arsenal jersey just to banter them off. Don't worry. Let me off that one. So, thank you so much, guys, for actually today's program. Like the first speaker said, most books talk about how to make money, but you rarely see the one that actually talks about how to spend money. And the three speakers actually pinned it down to how people spend money. I think what I'm going to just point out there, the peer pressure is maybe people spend. So what I'm trying to say here now is that if you look at Nigeria, for example, when people spend, this is the culture they grew up in. We don't know what is good. So I think what you guys are trying to do here is maybe bring out the information, because if you don't know, you will know. So I speak to some Gen Zs, and when we talk about influence on social media, we feel like they are not real, but this is the only thing they listen to. So I think if I have 1 billion, like Joseph said, I'm going to just spend more in sharing the books with every Gen Z I can get to. You have to create a value system. What are you spending against? That's one. So I also think that maybe in spending, it more have to be intrinsic value. Like Joseph said, you can't judge the way I spend money against the way you spend money. What brings me happiness? But at the end of the day is that if there's no social media, are you going to be happy spending what you're spending? So what I'm taking out from here is that before I do any spend, I have to just ask myself, it's intrinsic. Without social media, will I be able to happily spend it? Will I be on the Caribbean sipping coconuts? Or what if there's no social media? Will I still be happy about it? So thank you guys very much, and then keep pushing. And one more thing I also have to say, the BAME from your own part is say personal finance is personal. The truth is, maybe I feel if someone wants to make a decision, if you have a plan of where you want to see your life go in the next 2 or 3 years, it could influence the kind of decisions you make now. Because if you laden yourself, when you start yourself with so much loan to live present, you're stifling yourself of maybe optionality you could have down the future. I give you an example. So we wanted to make a very huge capital spend, let's say 3 years ago. So we have other colleagues that are going above and beyond what they can. I just told my wife, let's just go lower. So 3 years down the line, we are at the point that we could do those stuffs that we weren't able to do last year. We didn't saddle ourselves with debt. We now have the optionality why people have actually laden themselves with loan. So what I'm going to say here is that personal finance should be personal, of course. The secondly is that always weigh your current decision against how it's going to impact your future. It's fine to have the iPhones or what have you, but if what you're going to use to, increase your capacity, your earning capacity in the next 5 years, you're actually burning it through frivolities of today. Of course, that 5 years is going to come. Those that actually made the wise choice because they actually weighed their decision in long term. I think they're going to be good. So thank you guys. I'm sorry for the noise in the background.
Yeah, thank you so much, Izu. Really spot on. I feel everyone should write that in their diary. If there were no social media, would you spend what you're spending now? That is so spot on. And of course, personal finance, it affects you personally. So if you do anything because other people are doing it or because your colleagues are doing it, your friends are doing it, the impact will still be on a personal level. So think about you, be selfish about that. Think personal level. Hi, Doris. I see you raising your hand. Please unmute and go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I've learned a lot. The whole speakers have all what you guys have said resonated to the reality of life. So I want to ask a question. How do how does one balance the thin line between being generous and being strategic in spending? Because I know, okay, let me use myself as a yardstick as an example. You know, some persons are created. We just know that, oh, I'm someone who is very compassionate to people I care about, maybe family, close relatives, close friends, colleagues, care about them, their needs. So, and I found out over the years that a lot of people take advantage of that. If you're someone who is who aligns so well with people's needs when people are in need. Sometimes you find out that some of our friends, our relatives, they just have a way of coming around, even if they don't really have the need of whatever they are asking you for. They just know that this person has a soft spot, and then they try to be exploitative. So at the end of the day, um, how would I put it? How do you strike a balance between being strategic in spending and also not being emotionally attached to being kind? I don't know, would I say kind or being generous?
Yeah, I get your point.
Generosity and kindness, I think they are different.
Cool. Chimex, you're raising your hand. Do you want to answer the question? Because I feel like this is something you've been hammering on for a while.
Yes, 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 yes. Is my kind of question. That's why I
I
raised up
kind of knew.
my hand. So
Please go
I'll
ahead.
I'll I'll be very honest with you. And when dealing with money, you need to put emotions aside. Because what I see you doing is that you are playing the role of El Shaddai. And the only El Shaddai we have is God and Jesus Christ. If not, people will put pressure on you and you will die. And one thing I always ask myself is, if I'm not alive now, will these people survive? And if the answer is yes, then you can actually do without them. So I'm going to tell you the formula I always tell people. I call it the 50-30-20 principle. That 50-30-20 principle is that 20% of my income goes directly to investment or savings, and I remove it immediately salary or the income comes in. And no demon can touch that 20%. Like no demon can touch that 20%. Then 50% goes to my need, my want. There's what I call want. Want is house rent or food in the house or transport or fuel. Or that's where 30% goes into. Then 30% now goes into what we call need. That's where you do your Netflix and the rest. You can decide to now leave 10% of that 30% for charity. I have a particular percent I leave for charity. And once that money for charity finish, nothing will change my mind. I'm just using myself as an example here. Once that money for charity end, it all boils down to budgeting. Once that money for charity end, sometimes your budget charity have even been taken over by the next 2-3 months, depending on how you want to split it. And if you work with a budget and you finish your budget on charity, my dear sister, you will not die. You will not die, because these people are just making you El Shaddai, and they make you, and first of all, they come to hype you. They use all sort of names. Don't you see the sharp? Don't you see Bioma? All those kind of sweet, sweet names. And by the time they present this thing to you, those sweet, sweet things are to bring down your guard. And then they will attack and collect that money from you. So there's no emotions when you come to deal with money. You need to be strict. People may not like you because, like I said, you are not El Shaddai. It's only El Shaddai that everybody like, and that's Jesus Christ. You cannot help everybody. And if you try to help everybody, you yourself, you will die. And they will say you did not die well. So you need to be very, very tough about it. I don't know if this answers it. Thank you very much, Dubem, for giving me
Yeah,
the
thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you so much, Chimex. Just to add a little bit on what you've said, everything you said, correct, and I align to it. Everybody should have a budget and an allocation to everything they want to spend their money on. If you love to help people, to give to provide money to friends and family or even strangers or support causes and charity. You should have a budget for it. And if you have a budget for it, like Chime said, it will then not be something that would affect you in a way that is damning should you spend that budget on the things you want to actually use it for. So I think the problem is that you don't have a budget for it. So start by doing that. And secondly, I would encourage you to not fund people's excesses or people's shortcomings. Do not fund people's irresponsibility. So sometimes giving people money might not be the best way to help them. I know someone who doesn't give money directly to his family members. He would instead ask them to go and borrow it from somebody else. And when they go borrow it from that person, he sends the money to that person who they are borrowing it from, and the person will give it to the family member. The family member will now be obligated to pay back the loan. That way they get their money back, and the family member becomes responsible with money and also not entitled. Yeah, so you have to work out a solution that ensures that you don't try to solve poverty, because even Jesus said the poor will always remain with you. So that's how I know we cannot solve that one. Joseph, Joseph, you have your hands raised. You can unmute.
Yeah. Thank you. Apologies for taking a few more seconds. I was trying to get my headphone fixed. You've spoken about one of the things I had in mind to contribute to what Chimek said. Uh, and the other part is the summary is strategic giving, right? You don't enable people's irresponsibility. Just to give context, if you're one of those people abroad and you have maybe friends or family back in Nigeria, and almost every month you give them because you claim to have a budget, which is a very good thing to do. But you don't know what they use that money for. And there's a likelihood, which was my case last year. I had this friend that because conditions were not very favorable for him. And, every now and then I just give him a few things to help in addition to other support. But I realized this guy was just spending it on carrying women, on, buying drinks and living a kind of life that I can't even live with my own money. So I can't continue to give that kind of a person money because I want to be kind. I want to give to a friend. So not enable the responsibility. Debim just mentioned that. And the other one as well, because you have a budget doesn't mean you need to exhaust it every month. So if you have a budget, what I do is I have a budget of the amount of money I spend on black tax, and what I put it in a flexible savings account. So I don't exhaust it every month. I have certain amounts of money I send back home, and that is not the entire budget, right? The other amount of money that's left in the budget stays in the budget and grows over time. So if I don't exhaust spending, let's say it's £200 this month, it stays there. Then it can contribute, it can add to the next month's budget, 20% budget or 5% budget. And the next month budget as well, I don't exhaust it. And over 4, 5, 6 months, you may see yourself having way more in the kindness budget or black tax budget. You can decide to readjust the amount of money you put every month to help people. So that's it. Then the other one is what we call toxic charity. So as you're giving people, there's a smarter way of doing it as well to ensure that you're not enabling toxic charity, where I think there are 5 steps. The first one is appreciation. You give someone something the first time, they're very, very appreciative of what you've given them. The second one, you give them, they anticipate that you continue to give them. The third one, I think, is expectation as well. They continue to expect you give them. Then when it gets to the fourth month, is an entitlement. So if you don't give them, when they've got into the dependency phase, it becomes a problem. So if you're giving someone something, ensure that you validated the reason for giving them. And if you want to continue to give them what you can afford to continue to give based on circumstances. If you're working a kind of job and you know you can sustain giving maybe £100 every month, don't give once or twice because you're creating some form of expectation, which would lead to dependence, and it's going to fracture the so-called friendship or relationship you're trying to preserve by being too kind. So the summary is trying to be strategic and smart with your kindness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Really appreciate all the contributions so far. And moving on to announcements. For next month, which is starting tomorrow, the book for the month is Reasons to Stay Alive. Reasons to Stay Alive, but by Matt Haig. So that's the book we'll be reading for the month of June. And I hope to see you all here by the end of the month when we'll be doing a similar book review. If you really enjoyed today's session, this is how it always is. So please join the book review sessions, share with your friends, invite your friends, and let's all build a society that reads and not only reads, but acts on what they have learned. And in that same vein, we are announcing that our book club is live. You can join our book club. That's where you are always updated on everything that we're doing. So that if there's anything, we send the notification straight to your email. The link to join is on the flyer you can see here. It's a bit.ly link and it's a very short one. I will try to copy it, see if I can put it in the comment section here, but if I can't, you will just do me the favor of picking it up. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/GRPN book club. So that's the book club. With that link, you can register to be a member of the book club. It doesn't cost any money, it doesn't cost anything. We just want people who are passionate about doing the same things that we want to do. So if you join the book club, all it means is that we would invite you to read books, we will invite you to review books, we will invite you to share your learnings on the books, we'll invite you to meetings like this one. And we would also call on you if we're doing a book outreach in your area, where maybe in the area where you live or where you reside. So you would become a resource for those who love reading and those who love to read. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Bye. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.